Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Resilient Riches, the best podcast out there right now. We have an incredible guest for you, Bryan Goldstein, one of the fastest growing divorce attorneys in New York City. I've known Bryan for, 7 years now. And when he was just starting off, and then every year he's doubling, tripling, quadrupling his business. He's representing some of the most famous people in the country. And we're so excited to have you, Bryan Goldstein. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I know you have a lot of information. There's a lot going on right now. Since COVID, there was a big divorce spike, and everybody was locked down. People saw their spouses for who they were, and all of a sudden, right after, they're like, "I gotta get the hell out of this." Either they went from 1 bedrooms to 5 bedrooms, or they went from 3 bedrooms with each other to 1 bedrooms because they're kicking out their spouses.
Wasn't part of the problem also the courts were all closed down and super slow, and especially in New York, that's all I heard is that it would take forever to do anything.
Yeah, people were stuck, and I think people are still reeling from that pandemic that lasted a couple of years. It's still going on. People are still uncomfortable and just stuck in their, we live in New York. People tend to live in small spaces. Even if you have a 3 or 4 bedroom, it's a small space compared to what you'd have in the suburbs. So people are really stuck and still reeling. People are working from home more. So they're together a lot more, which you think would be a good thing. And hopefully it is for most people, but for some people, it just doesn't work that way.
Do you find also that there's a lot more marriages now?
I can't really comment on that because I don't marry people. I divorce them.
But prenups, I guess.
Prenups, yeah. I think generationally that there's been an increase in prenups just because the newer generation tends to have more money than the older generations did, and with more women in the workplace, women, they used to stay home more. Now they're earning and working, and people inherit money that they didn't used to inherit, like they. Back in the day. So I think just that's more of a generational.
But maybe people see, like with social media now, and you see like these huge divorces and these huge settlements. I think Paul McCartney, I remember his wife, he didn't have a prenup, and his wife got like, I don't know, a couple $1 billion from Wings or whatever. So like people see that and they know, oh, well, you know what, maybe I should protect myself. It's much more common.
And also look at the word divorce. Divorce used to have such a stigma. So it doesn't have that stigma as much anymore. So people are more inclined to get divorced if they want divorce.
You guys don't realize, like when I was young and I was in high school, I mean, we had a group of friends, maybe 20 guys in the class. One of the members was his parents were divorced, and was like, hush, hush, his parents are divorced. What? That's what it was like then. Nobody got divorced.
Right. And now, I mean, we have presidents who get divorced. Everybody's divorced. It's not, I'm sure there are still people who stigmatize it, but here in New York, I think it's just so common at this point.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere.
And they have so many great programs for kids who are, little kids who have divorced parents. There's a lot of programs for them that I'm sure didn't exist back then.
Absolutely.
So there's a lot of things that help facilitate the transition into having 2 families that definitely didn't exist before. So with all these programs and, like you said, the information that we have at our fingertips, I think the stigma around divorce has gone for the most part. And if people want to get divorced, they do.
Do you find now also with the change of legislation about gay marriage, do you find that there's a lot more divorce in the gay marriage community, in the LGBTQ community?
Of course. I mean, that's a whole new group of people who can get divorced now. I actually do talks on that as well, because not only are they now permitted to get married, and of course that would lead to divorce, but there are certain aspects of a same-sex couple being divorced now that is different than a opposite-sex couple getting a divorce. For example, lots of LGBTQ couples have been together for 20 years, 30 years, but they couldn't get divorced. So if you have one spouse who stays home and the other one works and makes a lot of money, but they've only been married for a couple of years, their spousal support payments are going to be low and for a short duration. So it's not that they, if you're an opposite sex couple and you chose to, cohabitate and then get married, that's one implication. Your spousal support might be short, but you made that choice. You said, I'm going to cohabitate with this person for 10 years before I get married. people of same-sex relationships had no choice because they couldn't get married.
What about like common law marriage? I mean, I thought that even if you don't get married, I'm from Canada. I have my niece and her partner. They're not married. His parents never got married, but for all intents and purposes, they're married. And what about common law marriage? Does that apply for opposite sex, and does it apply for same sex?
New York does not recognize common law marriage, or New Jersey. I
For
practice in
anybody.
New York and New Jersey.
For
Correct.
anybody.
Correct.
I see.
So are you seeing a lot of divorce now with people who have been cohabitating? Is that example occurring pretty commonly?
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of people who met after the legislation and who met after the right was granted. So that is not impacted. But for people who've been together, I have couples who've been together for 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, but they were only married for 4, 5, 6. So the financial implications and the distribution of assets is really one-sided, or tends to be one-sided.
Interesting.
What happens if they had a kid?
Custody is custody. So it's a best interest analysis. We look at what's in the best interest of the child. That's all. And thanks to the legislation in New York, even if the child is biologically one parent's, both parents have the same rights to that child. That's legislation from about 8 or so years ago.
Gotcha. It's very interesting because it's really interesting to see a new legislation comes out. It changes everything around. And then you have to go backwards. So legalizing marijuana, what happened with all the people who are incarcerated because they sold marijuana or they were holding marijuana, things like that. So do you see any backdating from the law? Do you see anything that's going to talk about, because this is a serious problem. People have been living together. I know couples have been together for 30 years. And one makes money, one doesn't, and then
we have clients like that. We have some clients like that come to mind.
Do you think they're going to backdate? Do you think, what is the solution?
Is that even possible? Is that even possible?
So there's actually a lot of articles you can read on backdating. New York courts don't recognize backdating marriage, but to get to that point, what people don't realize is when you're in a divorce, a lot of it, for the most part, is negotiations. There are extremely contentious divorces that, of course, go right into court, but for the most part, we negotiate. But going to that example of like a long-term relationship, short-term marriage, you have to be with your spouse for 9 years in order to collect Social Security under their policy, right? And up until, this year, it was 2015 was the decision from the Supreme Court. So it's actually impossible for an LGBTQ couple to have been married for 9 years. So if you're together for 25 years, and then you get divorced now, you cannot collect under the other's Social Security. So backdating is something very important because we need to account for the fact that this person can't collect Social Security and maybe is 60, 65 years old now. And what's going to happen to them? Maybe they stayed home, maintained the home. Maybe they had, a part-time job, things like that. So backdating is something that I often bring up in negotiations as just a matter of fairness. And it's equitable, and in order to keep someone sustained financially. But if we go to court, it's very difficult to show, and the courts don't recognize backdating. So
I mean, we know, like in the insurance world and financial services world, New York is super difficult. I mean, everything is a problem in New York. Everything is more legislation. I guess, is it the same with family law? Like if you're in New Jersey, is it better? Is it Connecticut better? Is everywhere in the United States better than New York? Because that's what it seems like to me.
Well, I'm more limited to New York and New Jersey, but I think living in this metropolis, it's incredibly busy. Even when I have cases upstate, like not Westchester, more rural areas, the cases tend to move much more quickly. Down here, your contentious divorce can last several years, and going back to finances, talk about lasting several years. There's tons of articles I'm sure you guys know about that pertain to how work productivity goes down and people lose their job. People make less money. People don't get the raise they thought they were going to get. They don't get the bonus, based on how many hours they build or how much they worked that year, because they're going through this divorce, and you have to go through the discovery phase, getting your documents together. You have to deal with the stress of exchanging your child or not exchanging your child for Christmas. It's just so heavy on
Well, you guys probably don't remember, but there was a very famous movie, Kramer versus Kramer,
of course,
with Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep, and she left, and he was a rising architect, and he had to find like a lower paying job with less stress and less demand, so that he could look after his son.
Mm-hmm. And that's a really interesting movie too, because I only saw it a few years ago because, everybody tells me I have to see it. But what was so interesting, and it's very well done.
It was like groundbreaking at the time. Like I remember when it first came out, like nobody was talking about stuff like that beforehand. And that's why it was so impactful.
And also because it was the mom who left. And then when she came back, she basically got custody. Also, everyone's smoking a cigarette in the courtroom, which was a little crazy.
Everybody in those years, everybody's smoking all the time. Marlboro Man was like a big icon. Everybody's looking up to him. Oh, he's so cool. It was on the cowboy, on the horse smoking. But anyway,
yeah, but it's changed a ton. I mean, if a mom left now for all those years, he raised the kid. She wouldn't get custody. No way. But back then, what year is that? 1980 or something?
Even earlier, I want to say.
Even earlier. Yeah. So, I mean, that really shows how things have changed, and hopefully the courts treat men and women equally. That's the intention. But I think historically there was a presumption in favor of women, and that's written.
Can you include custody in like the prenup and how that would go? Like if there's children coming, that is that something that you can predict, or it's too tough?
You can put anything financially into this prenup, into the agreement, but you can't put custody, because custody is a best interests analysis. So even if, two equally loving parents enter into this relationship and get married and have a prenup, one of them could do what Meryl Streep did and leave, and one of them could become an alcoholic, or one of them might not be interested, or for a number of reasons, it's not in the child's best interest to be with one parent or the other.
Yeah, there's emotions that have to be part of this.
Right. So it has to be at the time of the divorce.
Right, that makes sense.
So, Bryan, can you give us a little bit of your background, how you got to where you are? Something that I love about you is I know for a fact that we've never had a year, and me and you talk all the time, and you've never had a year where you go, you know what, I'm complacent. And that's a big part of our clients, our friends, people that we surround ourselves with, is that they're people who have overcome significant obstacles and constantly overcome, and they can't sit and be complacent, which for you, it's like we talk about, let's say you're having I'm just going to do hypothetical numbers because I don't want to give away your tax return immediately. Let's say, all right, my first year I made $250,000. Then you go, you know what? I'm really not happy with $250,000. I want to make $400,000, then $700,000, then $900,000. I want to have a $2 million practice and $5 million practice. And that's something that you're always doing, but it always comes from a moment in your life. So can you tell about that moment in your life, why you can't just sit still and you can go work in big law and sell your soul away?
It's passion. It's ambition. I was born with it. My parents are both lawyers. I remember vividly when I have two siblings, I'm the middle child, and I remember sitting around the kitchen table as kids, and my parents would talk about, my mom was a stay-at-home mom at that time, and they would talk about my father's day. And I would just be like, tell me more. I was so intrigued by it. And my siblings they couldn't care less. I used to go to court with my dad. I loved going to court with him. He was a criminal defense attorney. I loved just meeting people. He would introduce me to everybody, the judges. I would get to go up on the benches and, see what it was like. And I just had so much exposure as a kid. So I loved it.
Your father probably loved it too.
Oh, he absolutely did. So after when I was in law school, actually, I never had an intention to work for him, but there was the crash of 2008 and everyone in my class was having trouble getting jobs. And he called me up and he said, I need an associate. I was like, okay. Like I didn't even say, give me a minute. I just said, okay, great. And that was actually very close to graduation too. It was really unplanned. So I worked for him for about 4 years.
Was that with a competitive salary?
No, definitely not. I was treated very well and I was paid very well for the time, but I don't think that would be sustainable these days with inflation and everything. It's certainly not what a starter salary is nowadays. And that's not that long ago. That's only 11 or 12 years ago.
Just quickly, what is a starter salary now?
In my field, probably around like 120, somewhere around there.
Really?
Yeah. I hope none of my future associates are listening to this.
So my daughter's also a lawyer. And I know when she graduated, she had a tough time getting a job.
Mm-hmm.
It was not
It's a
easy.
tough market.
She ended up working for FINRA, and now she's in compliance at TD Bank. But it's what you find, your first job you find, and that's the path you're set on, really.
Yeah.
So continue.
That's exactly right. I mean, I always knew I wanted to litigate. I never wanted to be someone who sits behind a desk just drafting documents and things like that. So when I went to work for my dad, I was working on criminal defense matters and matrimonial matters, and I loved both of them. I got to try one criminal defense case in front of a jury. It was a misdemeanor. After 3 days, I got an acquittal. The jury was out for a couple of hours, but afterwards when we were talking to them, the reason they were out for so long was because they wanted their pizza delivered. So I would have gotten the verdict a little bit sooner if the pizza came sooner.
Maybe you should have gone out and got it for them.
I like you're saying the jury is out, and that's like a commonly used expression, but it's actually something that lawyers talk about. Mm-hmm. So when you're saying the jury's out, I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's where that comes from. That they're out and they're like making a decision.
Yeah, it's an important decision too. So I got an acquittal on that. Basically, I wanted to carve my own path. My father was a big fish in a small pond, essentially. Working for 40 years in the Rockland community. It was very well known, and it was kind of hard for me to, eke out my own identity. So I looked for jobs in those fields, matrimonial and criminal defense. My preference was always matrimonial, but I do love criminal defense too. And fortunately, I landed a job in New York City with a small matrimonial firm where we just did matrimonial. I was there for about 2 years. And at that point, I was practicing like 6 or 7 years. And I kind of wanted to just do my own thing. As an associate, at least in my fields, you're never really going to make a lot of money. You're not going to connect as much with the clients. You want to kind of carve your own path and have your own way of handling these cases. So I found a firm that wanted to open a matrimonial department. I just found them, I guess, on Indeed or Monster or one of those. The ad was for a matrimonial lawyer. So I just applied, and it turned out that this firm did not have a matrimonial department. And somehow I convinced them that I was the guy who could create one. I went on a few interviews with the partners, and they hired me. I basically just told them I'm a hard worker, and I had a lot of confidence in my abilities, which I still do, of course. And after about 6 months, I finally got one client for a prenuptial agreement, and he weared me down and barely paid me. And after that year, I probably lost the firm money. But after about a year, it started to really grow. And I became busy, and it was very exciting.
How did you make it through that 1 year? Because that's very common, especially you went basically into sales and selling a new practice. So it's very common for the first year to not make any money, but obviously you're writing a salary. That's great and all. But how did you keep pushing through, and how did you keep justifying yourself?
But just also to say, like when I was in business school, people say it takes 2 years to build any business, and so it sounds like you were right on track. Everything was the right way. I mean, it just takes time and 2 years until you really break even.
So how'd you keep pushing through?
It's hustle. I met a lot of really, really great people. I was doing coffees, lunches, dinners, drinks. I was out as much as possible, just meeting lots of professionals, guest appearing at networking groups, doing podcasts, talking about divorce law, meeting a lot of financial advisors, accountants, tons of people. And eventually it paid off. I think I connected well with the right people. There's a lawyer who's a matrimonial lawyer who I still keep in contact with. And I met him early on. He's an older guy. He's been practicing for like 45 years. And I asked him how he did it, and he gave me some guidance on things. But the one thing he said to me was his best referral source are former clients. And I said to him, but I don't have any. What am I supposed to do? And he's like, you got to get out there and hustle.
Chicken and egg.
So that's what I did. So I've just met some really great people. And at this point in my career, that was about 5 years ago when I started that. At this point, I've maintained connections with those important people, and we've become really close. It's not just, I think one of the reasons I connect well with people is it's not just about business and growth. It's about the connection. It's about the synergy. It's about my excitement for working together, working collaboratively. I think one of the things that I learned through all of that networking was that as a matrimonial lawyer, you can't do it alone. My clients have so many questions that I cannot answer. I need a trust and estates lawyer. I need a financial advisor. I need someone who knows about insurance or about accounting. And through the last 5 years, I've met people who have strengthened me as a lawyer because of the connections I've made with them.
Well, what about, what I hear a lot of times also is like it's very emotionally draining on your side because you're not seeing them at the beginning of the marriage when everything's full of love. Now, I mean, because my brother went through a divorce and she keeps coming back at him for more money because her lawyer tells her she should be getting more. My brother does very well. He's a broker in Canada. And he keeps, again, she's coming again. I mean, and in Canada, it's also like the divorce laws apparently are very clear. So, but she keeps coming. So isn't it very stressful and a mental strain for you emotionally?
Absolutely. Well, absolutely to the stressfulness, not the emotionally draining for me. It is a stressful time, but I think that's something that I thrive on. I really like helping these clients through this time, whether it takes 6 months or 6 years. Believe it or not, some of them do take that long. I have a divorce right now that just eclipsed the marriage of 8 years. So it's really just so much working with these people. For them, it's unbelievably emotionally draining. It's a lot of work. It's not just emotion, it's work. And for most of these people, they're going home and seeing these people at home. A lot of them still live together. They have kids, so they're going to be together for a very long time. They're going to be in communication. But to your point about emotionally draining, I think it's more, I like to help them through it. It doesn't impact me as much.
That's important.
Yeah, we do a lot of life insurance and we do a lot of like disability insurance and illness protection, things like that. And when something happens to somebody, a lot of people get like, they think the world is over, and we're able to then manage them through that transitioning process. And I mean, we're just used to it. It's just something that we've been doing for so long. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing that you're dealing with. It's like these are the biggest moments in people's lives. And if you're not able to connect with them and to walk them through that process, it's a really big deal. When you're talking about, okay, so then you, after a year, you hit, and then it sounds like you didn't just hit one time and you got lucky with one big case, which is what people are doing. They're trying to get that one big case and they're good to go. But you're what I love about you is you talk to all clients. Like you're not discriminating on anybody's financial statement, on really anything. Can you talk to why that model worked for you as opposed to others?
It's a really good question. I mean, like I said, it's about hustle and it's about connection. I relate really well with my clients. I empathize with them. I tell my clients when we start the process, I say, this is not me representing you. This is a collaboration. I advocate for you. I will fight to the death for you. And I do. I can be aggressive if I need to be, and I can be laid back if I need to be. It's whatever style at the time is required. But I think it's just in the beginning, it was all about volume, right? I needed to get clients. And I think after about 2.5 years, I had so much volume, thankfully, that, I had the opportunity to say, I don't want this case, or, I want somebody I only want clients who are rich, and I'm only going to take on those clients. But I mean, I have clients all over the spectrum. I have somebody who, I have clients who stay at home. I have clients who've never worked, and I have clients who are billionaires and everything in between. And like you said, I don't discriminate because these people need help. There's a bill, of course. I'm not saying I work for free, but I work very closely with my clients. I don't overbill. I work with them on the bills if I need to. But to me, it's more about helping people. So volume has always worked for me. I wouldn't want to be that lawyer who has 3 really big cases. I want to be that lawyer who helps people. And thankfully, with all the volume that I've had, I've been able to hire associates and staff to support me. And we've become such a great synergized team.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. We see a lot of lawyers trying to go off on their own, and they're trying to create something new, and they go, I hate working at this. I'm going to go do it. I'm going to go make it on my own. I'm going to do. What advice could you give them?
Take vacations before you do that. because you're not going to get many anymore. It's really about responsibility. I talk about this with my mother a lot because my father was a solo practitioner, and divorce. She always jokes divorce is like a stable profession to be in right now, but the stress of doing it on your own is so much more than working for somebody else. You have vacation days, you can take time off and really ignore your email. Like, I don't really have that opportunity. So it's not, everybody knows that in order to create a business, you're going to have to work hard, but it's not just about working hard. It's about sustainability. So you have to really find a work-life balance. You have to find a way to step away at some point, because I don't think I stepped away for about 4.5 years. But you have to really find a balance. So I think it's about hustling, of course, and it's about taking responsibility for everything.
And I love how much you network, which was a big thing, and that you can network all day long, but clients don't come right in the door. They don't all of a sudden say, "Oh, Bryan, I loved you today. Let's send you 10 clients tomorrow." So it took time for you to actually build that up. And this is much more. And we had a very interesting podcast with Kendall Cross, an Olympic gold medalist, who said, I wasn't the best, but I knew I didn't have instant gratification for my success. Every day I worked a little bit harder and got closer and closer and closer to my goal. And that's how he coaches and that's how he trains. So he called it like incremental goals and incremental success.
Well, he said that's what wrestling was all about, as you mentioned. That's what wrestling is all about, deferred gratification. And I think also, like what you're saying about is what we went through too, what Yair went through, what I went through. Any kind of building your business, any kind of new type of thing, that's what it is. It's 24/6 for us. But you're never off and you're always thinking about it. I remember when I first started my own business, the first thing is that I'm thinking about it all the time. I can't leave it at the office.
I love it. And I think it's about just self-gratification. Whenever, the three of us were working somewhere else, it was not nearly as rewarding as working where we are now. And my clients are happy. I'm very result oriented. And, I talk to you two about that all the time. And just getting them to the finish line, especially these people who are, really don't know anything about money or are just emotionally drained, someone who really transitions. Most of the time, if I have like a stay-at-home mom who really let the husband pay the bills, by the end of this, they've been educated by you or by someone else how to handle their finances. And they are so proud of themselves. And I love seeing that. And they're sustaining on their own and they're handling everything on their own. It's really, really rewarding. So doing it as I'm doing it now is so much more rewarding than before. Even though I've always loved being a lawyer, I always wanted to be a lawyer, but doing this and my growth and bringing on these amazing people and joining this firm that I'm currently working with, it's so rewarding to just be able to say that I've done this, I've built this, and I have the right people around me to help.
I love there was one word that you said, it's money. You said something about money in what you just said. Can you give 5 tips pre-marriage, during marriage, during divorce, and after marriage? So 20 tips total.
After
5
divorce.
20 tips right
20
now?
tips
Off the top
20
of my
tips.
head?
But pre-marriage, what should you really think? Because we have a few for pre-marriage, but just to prep people while they're thinking about it, I think it's a big deal.
Well, I think it's just important to know where you are in your life when you're getting married. Financially, we're talking about just finances. So if you're going into a marriage and you're 25 and don't really have many assets or bank accounts, it's very different than going into a marriage when you're 35 and you've worked for 10, 15 years and you have $1 million. So it's, what do you want your partnership to be? When you go into this marriage, everything that you acquire is going to be a marital asset. And there's arguments against that, but presumptively, everything is a marital asset. So if you're going into a marriage and you have money, do you want to protect it? Do you want to keep it separate? Do you want to give it to your brother to hold? What do you want to do with it? So that's something you want to consider. A lot of times people who are entering into a marriage who have businesses that they've created, that's something that people want to protect more than money sometimes. So it's really where you are in your life going into this marriage. What do you want to protect? And how do you want your marriage run? So a lot of times when I do prenups, I find them to be extremely transactional. And I speak to my client extensively because, I have cases where people have to put money into certain accounts to pay certain expenses. Like it's all pre-arranged. Most people don't do that. But when you do that, it just seems to me very transactional. My paycheck is going to go 80% here and 20% into a joint account. And that joint account is going to go towards our mortgage, but then it's what happens if that joint account doesn't have the money that month because I lost my job. So it's just very transactional. So some people just like to go into a marriage and say, what I already have is mine and you'll never touch it. But everything moving forward, that's going to be marital.
And you can do that. You can protect yourself with a prenup.
Sure.
And all your stuff before marriage, you can say is yours and that's never touched.
And can you talk about, there was the halachic prenup, the religious prenup, about the get, receiving a get. You had to, in that Yeshiva University will not marry you, that a get can be held over a spouse if you decide to get divorced.
So it's a big problem now within the religious world that couples, they get married. So when the divorce is also very high percentage now in the religious community. And what the husband will do is he'll not grant the get, which is the divorce document, which has to be given by the husband to the wife. That's the way it goes.
Right.
So he'll hold that back. And there's been some cases of, there's some different issues that have gone on, but he'll hold it back and he wants a payment. I have a cousin in Toronto that her father had to fly to Israel. They were living in Israel, had to pay him $25,000 for him to get a divorce.
So how do you protect against that?
So that's a very interesting thing. I've had a few prenups where we put that the get will be given by a certain time, like 60 days after the divorce or something like that. Usually we impose a financial penalty. But like you said, they don't have to honor that. They might want to pay the penalty, or they might want to say, take me to court. So really the best protection that we can do is put in the prenup that there's some sort of financial penalty, but people violate agreements all the time. So you'd have to go to court to enforce that.
So what would you do, tips if you are married, just good housekeeping tips to make sure that your money is protected and your finances are protected?
So I think even in this generation, we grow up really not talking about money. And I think people graduate college not knowing, myself included, just not knowing really how to manage their money or how to save money. And I think when you go into a marriage, it's the same. And you're now in a partnership where maybe one of you is earning, maybe both of you are earning, maybe you have inheritance, whatever it is, you should be open about it. You should be completely transparent. Here is the money that we have. It exists in ABC accounts, ABC investments, whatever it is. So I think in a marriage, the best thing to do, especially, if divorce is going to happen, you want to know what you have. But in a healthy marriage, you want to know what exists, what your finances are, because you want to work and then you want to retire and you want to work together and you want to build this life together. So it's really just sitting down, talking with each other every once in a while. May sound foolish to some people to even have that conversation, but it's about transparency and honesty between the two of you. So if you have something that you want to protect, that's fine, but you need to talk about it and just know.
Yeah, a big push that we have is something called money talks. And we say all the time that the more you talk about money, the closer you're going to get and the more money you'll actually have. So if you're somebody who sits silent, doesn't talk about money to anybody else, you're missing out on financial tips that you can get from your friends, colleagues, neighbors, whatever it is. And you might be going through financial issues. So one thing that we see, we have a client of ours, he's an attorney, and he doesn't like to talk to anybody about money, and he doesn't like to talk to his colleagues. He's been practicing for over 30 years, and he's still making like not even six figures. So he could do, he's a successful attorney in his regard, but financially, he's just never been compensated. So he's pushing himself to start making more money, which is a big problem that people have. What would you do during a divorce financially, if you're thinking about getting a divorce? What would be those points? And we're not advocating for divorce. We advocate for financial literacy, financial protection, and to be free financially. And this is a big problem, husband and wife, that if you're not prepared, you can go into real debt and you can really screw over your kids. Our goal is to make resilient riches that last forever. And this is one of those pitfalls that can destroy that.
And not to be afraid of the money talks. That's the most important
Exactly.
thing. Don't be afraid of it like it's some monster that's going to attack you. it becomes more familiar, that's what's important.
Well, even looking at, I know this is off topic, but even looking at salaries, Americans tend to, there's all these articles about how Americans who work in the same companies don't talk about salaries. And you go abroad somewhere and everybody's talking about what they make. It's like, it's not this hidden thing. That's why New York has this new law about putting on the ads how much
you have to disclose how much you're offering.
Right. So it's not this secret thing, especially when you're married and you're partners. I just want to mention, I'm not an advocate for divorce either. I'm an advocate for helping people. I come from married family. Everybody in my family is married. So I don't advocate for divorce either. I think it's important to get this information out there. So what I would say, to answer your question the longest possible way, people who are...
You're a lawyer. You just billed extra time for that. It was no problem. It's an extra $80.
So if you are thinking about divorce, well, the first thing that you should do is consult with somebody. You can consult with somebody without somebody knowing. That's fine. There's a lot of free consultations out there. I offer free consultations too. But it's very important, financial transparency. We're not talking about custody here. You guys are money people. But you need to know what you have. The biggest problem in these financial cases is people hiding money, people not reporting their true income, people underreporting their true income. A lot of people I have clients who make millions of dollars because they're in, the contracting business. That's a huge cash business. I don't think anybody reports accurately when it comes to certain industries. So you really need to know your finances. When you're living in a $2 million house and reporting $60,000 of income, there's some delving that needs to be done. And that's common, especially here in New York. There's a lot of money. A lot of people are doing, whatever they want with their money, putting it in trusts to hide it, not selling businesses or selling businesses because it has to be done at the right time to avoid giving it to your spouse. But it's just know what your assets are, know where your money is. That's just very important. And that's why you should have those conversations with your spouse, even if it's once a year or once every 2 years. At some point, you should just say, what do we have? Where is it? And also in the event of, God forbid, death. So you need to know these things.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back a little bit, and these are some great tips. We didn't get to 20. I think we got to, 3. No, we did 3, but 3 translated for us.
You didn't do during divorce and after divorce.
After divorce, make sure that you talk. Really, it's making sure that you have a partner. It's aligning yourself and creating your own personal family office. You need an attorney in part of your family office. It could be a divorce attorney. It could be just you need someone who understands the law that can protect you when you're making these decisions. That would be my tip.
And very important to get the right person. I mean, it's too often you get the wrong person that gives bad advice or wrong advice.
Can you talk about? That's a great point. Can you talk about picking an attorney?
Absolutely.
You're huge on that.
Yeah, that's something I talk a lot about too. I think, I met somebody years ago through networking who her husband had a lot of money and she hired an attorney for a lot of money at the time. This was in like the 90s. And she said she thought she got an okay deal. She wasn't upset with her lawyer, but she felt like every time she went to her lawyer's office, she couldn't ask a question. And if she did ask a question, he would give her an answer and make her feel stupid. And that might just be her. Maybe the lawyer was actually doing it correctly or speaking correctly to her, but that was her feeling. So what I talk a lot about is I love when clients come in with a list, a written list. And a lot of clients do. And they say, I got questions for you. And I say, fire away. I love looking at the list because it means that they're ready and organized. A lot of people don't do that, which is fine too. But when they come in with these questions, I encourage them to ask questions. I want them to feel as comfortable with me. If they want to know about cases I've tried or cases I've worked on or negotiations I've had.
Yeah, it's a real relationship. This is your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like take that seriously.
And you've been good enough, like some of our clients that we're talking to that already went through their divorce. We've sent them to you and you've been good enough just to take a look at what they've done and give some free advice, which, is great for them but helpful for us, but you've been very good with your time.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I'm so proud of the work that I do, and I love working with people like you, how we can help. I mean, I call you guys all the time. You always pick up the phone, and I can answer any financial questions for my clients. So that's just reciprocity and friendship, and I love working with you guys.
But that's what it is. You always said that you need to have that network, that you don't know everything. So you call the T&E, a trust and estate attorney, you call the accountant, you call the financial, you call the insurance people, you call the network.
But the point is that you're talking to the right people. Like, these are people you have a relationship, and we're all on the same page because we really all want to help people.
Right.
Just like you, and you're calling those people. So when I refer you to a client, I know that they're going to be looked after from A to Z, because all you're doing is you're not looking at the dollar number. You're looking at how can you help.
Right. And also with just building a business, you guys refer me somebody I don't help, I'm not going to get more referrals, or I'm not good with my time, I'm not going to get more referrals.
Yeah,
or it kills the relationship.
Correct. Kill for referrals. For referrals.
But to go back about choosing the right lawyer, I think you don't have to shop around. You can say, I love this guy, I love this person, whoever. But I think you just need to be able to ask the right questions, feel comfortable, and understand that this is a collaboration. That's what I really stress to my clients. I can advocate for you, but I don't know what went on in your home. So if I say something to the court, your spouse is probably going to say something different. So I need you there to respond, because I don't know the facts as well as you do. I know the law and I know how to advocate, but I can't do it alone. So I think that clients really are drawn to that. And I really keep them even with my volume, I keep them as close as possible, because the second that these clients are sending me 10 emails saying what's going on, that client's not happy. That never happens to me, because I will never let that happen. But you want the client to constantly feel like, there comes a point in time where I'm on trial. I can't cater to a lot of my clients during that time. But I will tell them, I'm on trial today. I will get to you tomorrow, or I'll get to you.
But your team you must have hired your team in your image, like you're hiring people and you're nurturing people and training people to respond like you would respond. So, you're not just getting Bryan, you're getting Bryan and his team.
Right. And that's exactly what I tell my team. I say, we respond to emails, we don't wait. And we respond to phone calls, and we give updates. So if a lawyer contacts me on a case to discuss something, I don't wait 3 days to tell my client. And I'm not saying most lawyers do. I'm just saying my practice is that we are in constant communication with you. And I think that you were talking about the stressfulness of the job. I think that's one of the things that makes it so difficult. Is I really like to have everyone current. I don't like to have things back up. So if I have 10 calls with 10 lawyers in one day, then that means I have to have 10 calls with 10 clients in that day, because I like to keep everyone up to date, which is why I'm tired all the time, but that's okay.
Your defining moment, what would you say that was?
That's a tough one. I think I think joining this firm where I am now was incredibly rewarding. I had built this practice at that firm that didn't have a department, and I brought my entire department to this new firm that basically paid me to come on and do my own thing. I have my little matrimonial department, and they have their departments. And I think just the fact that someone wanted to purchase me and bring my business over. And since that time, this firm has, I need an associate, we hire an associate. I need another associate, we hire another associate. We moved to a new beautiful office. I hired a paralegal. Like, we're really fostering growth. So I don't know if that was the defining moment, but that was an incredibly proud moment for me. And, it meant that my business was valuable.
I would say for you, the question I have is the moment that you left your dad and went off on your own, would that be one of those moments? And went to New York City, went to the Wolves?
That moment didn't motivate me as much as I'm motivated now. That moment motivated me to kind of just, begin to acclimate to New York City, because I was out, I've always been a New Yorker. I grew up outside New York City, but I practiced in Rockland County and Bergen County and Westchester more than the city. So I was more just getting acclimated, getting my feet wet, getting to know people. So when I left that firm and started my own clientele, that was more impactful for me.
Amazing.
I'm thinking maybe when it was like you're 8 years old and your father comes home, or you're sitting on the with the judge at the front, and you're thinking, "Wow, this is cool," and it hits you that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, inspirationally, absolutely. I mean, my father was.
That's probably it.
My father was a huge inspiration to me.
Like
my mother was a huge inspiration to me. I just loved the conversations that they had. It was just so interesting, and
probably
I loved
sitting on the judge's table. It's probably sitting on the judge's table. You go, "That's going to be me."
Yeah, Brian, hit with the gavel. Hit with the gavel. Play with the gavel a little bit.
It was fun. It's some of them would joke with me, and it was very intimidating. They would like use their judgeness with their robe and look down, and
it's intimidating. That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, but I thrived on it, and these appearances that I went to with my dad were usually just like arraignments or something short. And no matter what it was, I loved seeing him up there. Loved. And I used to tell him, I saw those other lawyers and I just thought you were better. Like, just because I loved seeing.
I'm sure he agreed with you.
Oh my God, he definitely agreed with me. But I just loved seeing
Probably
him.
Was
there.
true also.
I don't know if it was true, but I just looked up to him so much. And he was a great lawyer, but that was definitely
a great father.
And a great father. But that was very.
I know you were best friends.
Yeah.
We do this game, and we're going to go through it quickly. There's 52 values in a deck, and the reason why we do is because we want people to relate to you and to really understand you. There's a lot of young people that say, young lawyers that want to get into their own practice, and they or want to create a new division or go to a big firm or take the risk that you took, but they can't really see it for themselves, and they have confidence issues. So our goal is to break you down, teach you something, but also to teach other people that they can relate. So there's 52 values in the deck. Can you break down, of the 52 values, try to narrow down and get rid of your core values out of the 52? So take as many as you can that is a core value, throw out as many as you got. Don't tap too loud on the table because the mics will pick that up.
Am I supposed to say it?
No, not yet.
I don't. I got to read them.
No, just put if you think stats.
Your first gut feel, like
So this is your in pile. That's your out pile.
This is in.
That's in.
Sorry, I tapped. Okay.
But you got to be quick because it's 52, and it's a long.
I feel bad, but sorry.
It's fine. Put religion out and looked at my father.
It's okay. No judgment.
I did this with my mother-in-law, who is not known for her health. The cards come down. She looks at how she goes, "What is this card?" Like, threw it out almost instantaneously. Hence why she has diabetes and likes ice cream. But this is who she is. So in the cards, and what we love to do is we're behavioral financial advisors, and what we do is we take someone's values and we take those values and then create a plan around that. So some people find things that are more important, less important, but that's not really for you. So what we see is success while someone is building their wealth and growing their wealth. If you look at what motivates you and what pushes you, you're going to be more and more successful. If you try to live someone else's life and live somebody else's how they see life, you're not going to be as motivated. You're not going to be as successful. That's why the most motivated people in the world are typically the people who own their own businesses. So this is a way to break that down pretty quickly. These are the key pile. Mm-hmm. All right, so break that down, put down into 15. Go through it. Some of them are overlapping.
Okay. Well, I think that's a good point. I mean, you have to be honest to yourself, and if you're not honest to yourself, Zadie, you're my father, your grandfather. He was a CPA, always wanted to be a lawyer, and later on in life, he tried to write the bar, and was not really he wasn't able to do it. It was too late, but it's something that he always wanted to do. That's he came out of the World War II and became a CPA, but always wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah, that's what people love. People love the law. They also think that lawyers make so much money. They really don't. Sorry to tell you.
Some do.
Some do if you become partners over a long period of time, but how it works in big law, for example, is that you come in with a really nice salary and there's really a trajectory of growth. So it stages over time. He's getting there. Go a little tighter. 10. Just break it down to 10. Keep kicking them out. And some lawyers, when you're going to big law, you get this big salary. You think I'm making so much money. You're working all day, all night. You're really not sleeping. It's really, really abusive. And your trajectory of your income goes up and up and up. But if you take the hours that they work and break that down, they're really not making as much money. So the salary comes, but it's important to look at the salary and to also break that down into time.
Now do your top 5.
This is hard.
Yeah. So put them out on the table now.
This is the last thing.
And then we'll call it for today.
Okay. I can get there. I like challenges.
Challenges is good. You're at 9, 10. Okay, so take down, you have 11 going on. Take out your 5 and then tell us why you chose your 5.
I don't know if those are the 5, but they're 5 good ones.
5 for you. All right, tell us what you got.
Competition, family, honesty, autonomy, and meaningful work.
Oh.
More?
Yeah.
No.
Talk about each one.
Well, meaningful work is important to me. I love what I do. I can't imagine doing something that I wasn't so passionate about. And at this point in my career, I'm just so passionate about my work. I wake up every day not, oh, I can't believe I have to go to work. I love going to work. Sometimes I wake up like, oh, today's going to be a hard day, but I thrive on it. And when I get through it at the end of the day, I'm just so happy. So meaningful work is something that's really important to me. Autonomy is something that's really important to me as well, because I think running my own business or running my own sub business as part of a larger firm is something important, not having someone breathe down your neck and the more rewarding aspect to it. So I get to really run my own cases. I get to govern how the matrimonial department at my firm works. And that is really important to me. Honesty. In my field, honesty is a problem, which most lawyers who know me or who've been against me know that the second someone says something that is remotely dishonest, I will jump on it. I believe in honesty, and I believe in fairness, and I believe in equality, and I believe in the court system, as backed up as they are, but I hope it really is founded on the honesty of my client or myself. And, I think the more honest I am, the better advocate I am, because courts look more proudly upon that. What else do we have here? Family. We've talked a lot about my family. That's probably the most important thing to me in the world. And it connects me to my parents, and it's very important to me. And I like being the lawyer. I complain to my siblings all the time that everybody comes to me for things, but there's a reason why. I like being that person. And then I have competition here. I think competition is what drives us. I think, I'm a litigator. I have to like competition. Otherwise I wouldn't be successful. I want to win. I want my client to get what they deserve, what they're entitled to, or even more. So competition is really important as part of my practice.
Nice. We love it. And it really speaks a lot to who you are. And we see honesty and being true to yourself. And that's really why you've built such good friendship. This is really the definition of friendship. It's honesty, loving what you do. That's where your passion's coming from, family, and putting people that you're close with into your family. Competing, because you are a litigator, it's serious, and you want a competitor. And autonomy is somebody that's actually going to think for himself and actually is going to do what he thinks is right. It's a great tool. It's a great set of values for someone who does what you do. I want to just, how can people find you? Just give yourself a little plug and then we'll call it.
Sure. So Bryan Goldstein, I am the head of the matrimonial department at Grant, Herman, Schwartz & Klinger. And you can find me at ghsklaw.com, or you can email me at bgoldstein@ghsklaw.com.
And they can find you on LinkedIn?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Bryan is with a Y. That's the most important part. Or they can call you and ask.
That's true. That's true. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so much for coming.